Hello everybody, Justin here, American Mustang School, and this is my Mustang Whiskey. And I'm here to bring you a show. Actually, I do these videos for myself, so I'm kind of learning things, sharing here on YouTube, American Mustang School. And maybe you can learn something from it just as I have. It's really benefited me, so hope that it'll benefit you. So this show is Law of Polarity, and it's really cool law. I really like it. Why do we need to know it? Uh, Pretty much for character development. Let it manifest whatever you want in this life. It's kind of hard to do that without understanding the laws of nature. I had the coolest accountability partners to help guide me into understanding these laws of nature. And this accountability partner, Whiskey is his name, he's one that helped me develop what I think most everyone needs to develop, and that's an awareness and conscious awareness at that. So the material realm to the spiritual realm, which is interesting to me because just this past week, I learned for myself that transferring from material world to spiritual realm is kind of what I've been desiring or attracting. And it's kind of can be explained like this: ego self to sacred self. Um, Understanding everything in the five senses and then moving beyond that. The five senses or the daily habits of life into another realm. And we're going to go into that with this law of polarity. The point is to ascend in consciousness, beyond the five senses. Opposites are the same in nature, they're just at different degrees. I'll give you some examples. So it's light and dark. I used to camp in the woods with the horses, and the sun goes down, the sun comes up. Light and dark, total opposite. Cold, hot. Some days it'd be hot, some days it'd be cold. Winter, summer. It's the contrast. It's really interesting. They're the same in nature. It's just different degrees. Law of polarity. The up, down. We're riding in the mountains of Colorado. One moment we're up on top of a mountain looking over the valley. Another moment we're down in the valley looking up at the mountains. It's really interesting when you start to put into perspective or raise your consciousness to this law of polarity. And what are the reasons we even want to know this, right? It's the game of life. It's the understanding of how to not get hurt, how to benefit. Those are the most important reasons, that why you'd want to do anything to benefit yourself. That's why. Horses, again, accountability partner. I created what I call a 5-part series. It's a series of questions I ask every horse when I introduce myself and want to get to know them. I get a deeper understanding of them. They get a deeper understanding of me. Well, in doing that, I got to discover I got a deeper understanding of myself, and they got a deeper understanding of themselves. So out of one, the human, came 3. And what do I mean by that? Well, out of one human interacting with one horse, we got to raise awareness. We got to raise consciousness. We got to understand the spirit in both of us that empowers both of us. His conscious awareness rose, my conscious awareness rose in our relationship. And that is something law of polarity had a lot to do with. We could at sometimes be polar opposites in thinking something. But then when I would change my perspective and then present again, he saw my change, then he could change. And we kind of met in the middle, so to speak, and got a deeper understanding. And that's a really cool thing to understand law of polarity, especially when you can see it in real time, sort of like a microcosm or a micro state of things with a horse and human, and putting it into practice with intention, seeing it unfold, experiencing conscious contact with it, and then knowing it rather than just knowing about it. So this law of polarity, it's a real benefit in understanding the game of life. So whenever I would play with horses, I would get the law of polarity in fast and slow. Am I moving too fast? Am I moving too slow? They would reflect to me what I'm presenting to them. So in essence, I could present something to this horse and observe his feedback, and then whether I needed to make a change for the most desirable outcome, I could have a choice, or definitely an option to make a choice. So there's information or energy exchange to give options for choices. That's the law of polarity. You get a contrast, you get a choice. There's options. They're all important. You can't really have one without the other, or you wouldn't understand the one. So hopefully this is making sense. In the human element, we're all born into the human element. We'll just say that. Without contrast, it's going to be difficult to navigate in finding out or discovering your purpose, or discovering what life is all about. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? So the accountability partner in a horse, man, it was awesome because it helped me embrace what could be instead of what is. And that was my makeup. I was five senses guy. I wanted to see what it is. I wanted to understand it for what it is. And I wasn't too interested in what it could be. Well, horses helped me understand, hey, what could be is what you need to focus on. Granted, we're in the moment together, but we're seeing this law of polarity take place. We get a contrast, and I go, okay, what does this exactly mean? I've been taught traditional ways of training horses, force them to submit with pain or fear of pain, forced compliance. Well, what could it be like if I created something else that would create willing compliance? Oh, then there was a game changer. Because when I started embracing what could be instead of what is, I didn't really need to define, I really didn't need to define me in the equation anymore. It was more like, okay, let's get the ego down and just not discard it, but like just make it be quiet. Ego, be quiet. I know the ego is needed because you couldn't have contrast again. You couldn't have a law of polarity. You couldn't understand what a sacred self is without an ego self. So by saying, okay, let's create willing compliance between the horse and I. Let's put the ego down and let's start thinking in realms of what could be instead of what it is. Traditional practices dictate X. I'm going to put a piece of equipment on this horse to force him to submit to me. Now let's change that. What if I don't put a piece of equipment on him and just actually take it all the way out of the equation, and I present myself to him, and I observe through his eyes myself, make necessary changes to create what could be. And then we define, as that shapes and mold, what it is that we're after. In other words, the experiences are how we learn. And then whenever you think and do to become, it's just reaffirmation after reaffirmation that you're on the right track. I'll put it this way. I used to judge myself a lot. I'd try something with a horse, it wouldn't go my way. I would judge myself pretty harsh, but take it out on the horse. And it's like, wait a minute. Okay, so what's the opposite of judging myself? How about if I love myself? If I love myself and then present that to my horse, he loves me back. Or I start seeing a reflection in his mind through his body that he loves me back. And it's like, okay, there we go. Let's try that. Horses are guides for me to go inward rather than outward. Outward, inward, law of polarity. If I'm trying everything outward and nothing's working, we'll start looking at the opposite of that. What if I go inward and then present outward rather than outward to justify what I think needs to be done? Let's go inward, present, observe, make changes, do it again, wash, repeat. We get into a feedback loop where I think and then do. rather than do a lot of times without thinking, because we could go into the unconscious and the conscious mind, and we do a lot of things unconsciously, like me standing here talking to this camera, moving my hands. I'm consciously aware that I do that, but there was a time where I wasn't. Swatting at flies, we unconsciously touch our face 2,000 times a day. So back into contrast, it's like, well, what if I start thinking before doing, observing feedback from the accountability partner, make changes, do it again, and then get into a rhythm or a flow state where it's affirming, yes, go inward. Your short and shallow breathing. How about long, deep breaths? The opposite. See what it does. And then I could create this experience which defines the relationship that I truly want, because I present something true and honest and then expect true and honest feedback. From accountability like a horse, you're only going to get true and honest. I'm here to tell you, I've played with them decades. They're always true, they're always honest. If we don't understand the law of polarity, it may get confusing because they would be responding in a manner that we don't understand. Because if you don't understand the law of polarity and you try to apply yourself to a horse, a relationship, it's going to be difficult to understand what they're presenting back based on what you're presenting if you don't understand the law of polarity. So answers are inward. That's the point. We got to go inward, present outward. That's going to manifest into something so special that all the other laws we've talked about start coming into play in conjunction with this one. And then you'll be attracting. When you ascend in consciousness, the polarity looks different. So my prior self would contrast with my now self and my future self. But I don't want you to think you're discounting or discarding the ego or your prior self. That gets misconstrued a lot of times, where people are like, kill the ego. You've got to kind of look at it in law of polarity. If you didn't have that ego self, if you didn't understand that, you wouldn't have contrast for ascension. You wouldn't be able to go, all right, I've actually come from somewhere, transitioned to somewhere else. Rather than, think you were a victim in the past, you are now a victor over your past. So that law of polarity allows us to look at, okay, a bad experience happened. Say I did something with a horse and it got pretty violent, pretty fast. I could judge myself pretty hard on that. But I could say, okay, wait, I did those things. I see a contrast, make a change, present again, beautiful results. Well, see, one was just as important as the other. Out of one comes three. You get to understand much deeper. You get to experience the depths of these laws I'm speaking of. You get to put them into practice to create the benefits in life we all want. So I truly love my prior self, but I'll have to say, I hadn't always. It was one of those things where I looked at my past and thought, sometimes, being in judgment, that was wrong, or I could have, should have, all those things. But I'm here to tell you, whatever you've done up to this very point happened the way it was supposed to happen. How you choose to look at it right now is the choice. Whenever we look at our past differently, law of polarity, we get to experience now and in the future differently. So we want to be in flow state in all areas of our life. When I'm on the ground with a horse, I don't want any change when I get up onto his back. I want it to be in flow state. The skill, the experience, and the challenge pretty much even keel. If the challenge gets too high for the skill and experience, we can always slow it down. Law of polarity. We may be going too fast too soon. I can slow it down, invest the time. Law of compensation. So it's not forced or taken. I'm not trying to take anything from this relationship. I'm not trying to force anything. I want to give and receive. And we get into a feedback loop of giving and receiving instead of, taking and keeping. I want something from you and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to force you to do this to satisfy me. No, I want to give and receive. I want to love. I want to give love, be loved. In the relationship, in the feedback loop, flow state, in all areas of our lives, we can create that. Then it's harmony and it's balance. So law of polarity, balance, imbalance. It's okay to have imbalance. You would never know balance. It's okay. You'll never understand a high without a low. You'll never understand happiness without sadness. You'll never understand it. It's there for a reason. It's not an accident. So why do we want to do this? We want to learn. We want to learn to love, be loved, not judgment. Those were some of the things that I had to learn in horsemanship to ascend in a higher level of consciousness, teach others how to ascend in a higher level of consciousness. But in doing that, what was really cool is horses I watched them. They got to ascend in a level of consciousnesses too. It's kind of like this. A horse can, these are wild horses, once wild. They live out in nature. They're just fine out there. They can swat flies just fine. They can eat grass. They can fertilize the ground. They can procreate. They can live a great life and then die. But inviting them into the human experience, we get to aid in their ascension and consciousness too, done correctly. If you don't know the laws of nature, it's going to be almost impossible. I was very fortunate to learn what I'm sharing with you. I went inward, presented outward. I thought and I became, or I did, and then I became. So in him thinking and him doing, he becomes. We are the total sum of what we've been thinking and doing in our relationship to this very moment. Calm, quiet thinking horses, calm, quiet thinking humans. Flow state, skills, experience, challenges. We understand them. We can do them. We can overcome them. We can look back on past experiences and change our thoughts today about those that may have manifested over a lot of years. That's the beautiful experience of life. That's the flow state. That's learning the game, how not to get hurt, how to benefit. So I am today what my 5-year-old self was before the world told me who I was supposed to be and what I should be doing. Let that sink in. Because that's what I've been doing, letting that sink in. I remember being 5 years old, very distinctly. My parents divorced, got new parents. I didn't choose them. It was pretty much forced upon me, which is fine. The way I look at it today is like, no, that happened for me, not to me. I actually had 4 people giving me a perception rather than just 2 or none. And what a benefit. At 5 years old, we're conditioned and programmed to go and do things society dictates that need to be done. And sometimes we stop thinking, consciously developing, ascending. And this video right here represents how I transitioned from that to this. In all areas of my life, health, wealth, happiness, relationships, spirituality, I got to practice each one of those interconnected through horsemanship. And it was really beneficial in learning the game of life. So again, horses, great accountability partner. And I'll give you one example of another very important lesson. If you're uncomfortable in life, look at the opposite, which would be comfortable. Create a way to do that for or with the horse is the way I learned it, but with other people, with yourself, and more importantly, but with other people. It may just be something as simple as think about what you think about. Are you tense in the body? Do you need to take a deep breath? Do you breathe throughout the day? How many times do you consciously say, I need to just stop and draw in a breath, hold it, release it? Do it 2 or 3 times. Conscious awareness is developed by thinking, doing, and becoming, putting into practice. You know, if my horse is tense, you know, he's reflecting what he's thinking in his mind through his body. His body reflects what he thinks in his mind. And so if his body's tense, his mind is tense, mentally tense. The opposite would be to relax. The law of polarity states, if this horse is tense, I need to show him how to relax. I need to get him comfortable. He's in discomfort. I'll trigger a release of that mental and physical tension. I'll do it in myself. We will create this understanding, mutual understanding, that we are opening, not closing. We are expanding, not contracting. But I will say it's okay to have contraction. It's okay to be tense. It's just develop the awareness to where when you are, you recognize it and you know how to offset it in that polar opposite. You know, short, shallow breathing, horses will do that when they contract. The second I trigger a body response of relaxation in myself and them, they relax. When I forget to do it, they'll remind me. That's the beauty of an accountability partner, especially when I'm on their back and my mind drifts away. They will do something to either A, gently bring me back, or B, abruptly bring me back into conscious awareness and then how to benefit. So in understanding that, you can stabilize, you can get centered. If you practice this daily, you practice these laws of nature, put them into practice of your life, you will go into a flow state. Why go flow state? It's being prepared. Because think, if life throws something at you and you're already in a flow state, how much better are you going to address the challenge than if you were in a chaotic, incoherent mindset or conscious awareness, or if you were in a low conscious awareness, you know, fear, anger, and something happens? How will you handle it? These are the things you need to think about. You know, I make these videos for myself, so I watch this back for myself. I want to become better. These guys are accountability partners for me. A lot of people don't have access to them. There's other areas of your life that you can understand or know about, put into practice to actually know. It's a gradual thing. You know, the horse guides me, you know, I guide them, they guide me, so it's a mutual gain. And I get to course correct throughout our relationship, and it's interconnected in all areas of my life without the horse. So health, you know, my health, it's off the charts. I've been really healthy all my life, thankfully. My wealth, off the charts. I could not, I'm very content. I have the means to do what I want to do today, anytime I want to go do it. You know, relationships. I've been married to my wife almost 30 years, 27 years. And I love her more today than I loved her yesterday. And that's kind of a cliche or whatever, but it's like, yeah, it's true. And defining these laws of nature helped me understand and define those things, those other areas. Spirituality, more spiritual than I've ever been. Can't wait to see what's next. What could be, rather than what is. And that's stabilization. That's being centered. That's flow state. That's attracting to you what you truly want, need. So until we know how to get our own power from nature, we'll suffer. And what's the opposite or polar opposite of suffering? Well, Define that for yourself. But release of pain. You don't have to be in pain. You want to attract what you want. You want to become what you want to attract. Think, do, become. Very simple, but it seems to complicate, we humans seem to complicate it. Think and do, you become. That's the conclusion of today's show. Other than I wanted to share with you one more thing. A lot of you may or may not know that I created a product, and it's a bitless bridle. Everything I do with horses has to be in an ascension, not a decline. So law of polarity, I want to ascend, not decline or descend. A bitless bridle, which I happen to have all along this wall, but a bitless bridle is a polar opposite of a bitted bridle, meaning this doesn't have a metal bit that goes in his mouth. If I were to do that, understanding the law of polarity, if I were to put a bit in this horse's mouth and I get on his back, and I've already established the ground rules way before that in all the 5 levels of horsemanship that I practice with horses, and then I accidentally hurt him through pain, forced submission, the opposite of asking, forcing, law of polarity, I would create that result that would follow. Maybe it'd be gradual, but in time it would present. He would not be a willing, compliant horse in the relationship. He would be rebellious and resistant. And then generally people will go more force, more rebellion, more force, more rebellion. Then what's the outcome? Think, do, become. He becomes a defiant, unwilling, dangerous in some instances horse. But I created it. See? So it's not fair. All of the other horsemen, horse people that, they're pushing products for marketing gain, money gain. What's the real value behind it? Is there? Those are the questions that need to be asked. So if you're following along in these laws of nature videos and you want to continue to learn and grow and develop, I designed this bridle to ask horses questions, not force them to submit. The law of polarity dictates the pressure that I apply with this asking device, either high or low, is information or energy. If I put a bit in his mouth and try to do that same thing, maybe it can be done. We'll just say 1 out of 10 people could do it. I wasn't one of them. And in true and honest to the horse, I took that out of the equation. That variable of putting a bit in his mouth and forcing him to submit with that pain that will be caused. I wasn't confident enough to where I would never do that to him. Because the very first time you do it, the second you do it, it's got a lot of undoing because law of polarity. Cause pain, got to create comfort. Cause pain, got to create comfort. So the law of polarity dictates, and I want to stay centered, I have to pay attention. Wherever I'm putting my attention, energy goes there. So if I can decrease the possibility or probability that I would hurt my horse with a piece of equipment, that'll help me ascend. That'll help the horse ascend. We ascend together. You look at it on a triangle, we're both trying to go to a peak. If I'm moving further faster than the horse, we won't get there at the same time. So I either need to slow down, make changes to help him catch up. Vice versa. Horse is ascending faster and I'm not. Got to make changes. So this law of polarity comes into play on everything and anything that you will ever do. Any relationship you have. With anything, with money, with health. If you're getting too fat, you got to slow down on what you're eating or change your diet. If your bank account's getting too low, you've got to stop consuming and spending. You got to start saving and investing. If you're out there hardworking and earning a lot of money, but you're just spending it freely, got to learn, make a change, law of polarity. I'm preaching this to myself. I am a very hard worker, but I was a very freely spender. Well, through time and understanding these laws of nature and having relationships, I developed an awareness, a conscious ascension into learning the game of life, of how to not get hurt and how to benefit. So this law of polarity will help you. If something's not working, look at its opposite. If I had a bit in his mouth and he was a bolter, I took the bit out and he stopped bolting. Bolting means running away very fast. And that's an affirmation of like, okay, you're on the right track. Now, that wasn't the case with this particular horse, but I've had horses in the past like that because they run from pain. Who wouldn't? It hurts. What's the opposite of hurt? Those are questions that we must think about. And you got to think about it. You got to do it. You got to put it into practice. You'll become that. Then you'll attract. That is the end of our show. Whiskey, thank you, buddy. I love you. And you are a great little statue. But he loves making videos. I love making videos. Good day.